record this session. Okay, we made it through all the rough stuff. So now it's time for introductions. First, I just really wanted to welcome all of you. Thank you for your patience and always working out these details in the beginning of trainings to make sure everybody's in the right spot. So my name is Ann Shopey. I work with Northwest Regional Education Service District as an instructional coach for the early intervention and early childhood special education program. I have been a special educator for almost 30 years now. I've worked in a variety of roles, working with our Birth to 3 program, working with the 3 to 5-year-old program as a teacher, as an evaluator. And now I have this exciting role as an instructional coach, which means I get to do a lot of professional development and outreach to all of our wonderful providers who are serving so many of our kids, which is all of you. I'm going to introduce Emily Wakefield.
Hi, I'm Emily. I work with Ann at Northwest Regional. I am also an instructional coach. My background, my career started out being a special education teacher. I taught K through 5 for 4 years and then moved on to teach inclusive preschool for 5 years and then was an assistant principal before moving down from Seattle to the Portland area, where I then taught classes for PCC and I supervised for the special education department at Portland State before joining the Northwest Regional team as an instructional coach. And I would have to say that my favorite part of the job is helping people work through these tricky situations that we're going to be talking about tonight. These children who we're working with who are having difficulties and the teams that need help navigating that system. So I'm very excited to be here with you all. So in the chat, if you all could do Ann and I a favor, we would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourselves, who you are, where you're from, where you work, what your experience is working with kids. And Ann went over how to get that ORO credit. So don't worry about that last piece. We'll be doing some shout outs. Ooh, Paula Robertson, this is your first year teaching preschool, but you have a lot of experience to go off of, so that's awesome.
So who you are, where you're from, where you work, your experience working with kids. McKay Elementary, Beaverton School District. Welcome. Rainier Preschool Promise, Vernonia, Merlot Station, nice. Head Start, Nature Center. Wow, lots of diversity here, lots of different experiences and places that you work. A lot of you have many years of experience.
Yeah, that's so exciting to see.
All right, well, keep those coming. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide.
Okay, so this is tonight's agenda. So we right now have been going through our intros and background information. We're going to talk a little bit about what inclusion is and social emotional development. Then we will move on to what behavior means. When we are working with kiddos with problem behaviors, we'll be talking about some preventative strategies that we can use to hopefully prevent some of those from even happening. We'll then take a break for 10 minutes. We will move on to how to manage behavior, so what to do in the moment. We'll talk about some de-escalation strategies, how to help kiddos come back to their baseline. Then we'll do a putting it all together activity where you all will have an opportunity to practice some of what we're learning about. Then we'll close up with some resources and tools and an opportunity to ask questions. So with that being said, we want you all to be comfortable. If you need to get up and move around, use the bathroom, grab something to eat, please feel free to do so. We understand that when things are recorded, sometimes it can feel a little weird to have your camera on, but we would love to have your camera on if you feel comfortable, just because it helps us feel like we're engaging with people instead of computer screens. So we encourage you to keep your cameras on. And please feel free to put questions in the chat. Ann and I will make sure that we are monitoring that and answering things.
I just wanted to add that we will be checking for participation at some point in the middle of our presentation or at the end, just to make sure that everybody's here who wants oral credit. We are supposed to check for participation. So.
Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to start out by just doing a little bit of self-reflection. So what makes you feel supported? This could either be you feeling supported at home with your partners, your children, the people you live with. It could be how you feel supported at work, the people and systems that are in place to help you feel good and comfortable doing what you're doing every day. So just take a second to think about the different things that help you feel supported and go ahead and put them in the chat. So what are things that people do that help you feel supported, or what kind of systems are in place that help you feel supported? Yeah, family first and other moms. So people, words of affirmation. Encouragement. Directors and teams. So I'm hearing a lot about relationships. Good relationships are important. Having people to relate to. Yeah, so what I love that I'm seeing over and over again is, feeling connected to people, feeling like your family or the people that you work with are there for you, whether you are having a good day or a bad day. And I think that the same can be said for the kiddos that we're working with. The kiddos that we're working with need to feel supported. They need to feel loved and taken care of, no matter how they show up every day. Even if they're showing up, in a really bad way and acting out and doing all the things that make it difficult for us to be calm and supportive as teachers, it's our job to make sure that we are making sure that they're feeling supported and loved and taken care of, because if they're not feeling supported, then they're not going to be able to really learn and participate the way that we want them to. So we just wanted to start with that reflection piece before we kind of dive into how we can support our kiddos and help them work through these challenging behaviors. Next slide. Okay, so we're just going to do a quick overview of the ESD's EI-ECSE program. So EI stands for early intervention. So when we're talking about EI, we're really talking about kiddos birth to 3, and ECSE stands for early childhood special education, which really focuses on those 3 to 5-year-olds. So the kiddos who are more of a preschool age before they go to kindergarten. So our agency covers 4 counties: Clatsop, Columbia, Tillamook, and Washington. And the ECSE department covers a variety of teams. So we have our evaluation team that Anne has been a part of, where those are the people who are evaluating kiddos and identifying how and where they qualify. And then once a kiddo qualifies, they will be served either in the EI program or the ECSE program. And when we're talking EI, we're really mostly focusing on parent coaching unless the child is in a daycare setting. But a lot of our EI services come in the forms of parent coaching. For kiddos in our ECSE program, we do parent coaching as well, but we also provide services wherever kiddos are being served. So sometimes that's in a SAIL classroom, which is our self-contained program for kiddos who really need to learn those basic skills like imitation, attending, being able to appropriately engage with toys. We also serve kiddos in their community classrooms, whether that's a preschool or a daycare. We work with the Oregon Child Development Coalition of Head Start through the migrant program. And we also work with kiddos in Head Start. And so the services that we provide for kiddos can be a variety of services. Sometimes that's observations of us coming in and looking at kiddos and seeing, you know, what they need and giving feedback to the teams based on what we see. We also help develop and support classroom and childcare teams in those settings. So we go in and provide coaching and do modeling. We also develop instructional plans, really focusing on specific child goals. We put a lot of time into training our community providers on how to implement those plans. Like I said before, we do a lot of modeling, coaching, and providing of ongoing support to make sure that teens and kiddos are feeling good and supported where they're at. And we also really like to do what we're doing tonight, which is, you know, providing opportunities for our greater community via trainings to make sure that everybody is receiving information and able to access that. Next slide. Okay, so our next talking point is why inclusion? Why are we as an agency pushing towards inclusion? So there's a lot of data out there that shows that not only children with disabilities benefit from receiving services or being placed in educational settings where all children are included, but also typically developing children have been shown to make a lot of progress in those settings. So there was some really great data that came out of Columbia University in 2016 that estimated that 745,336 children between the ages of 3 and 5 have identified disabilities or delays. That is a lot of kids in only a 2-year age range or age gap that really need to receive services on a daily basis. And the research showed that children with disabilities in inclusive settings are more likely to engage in peer interactions. They have higher math, language, literacy, and cognitive outcomes. And they also have a positive impact on their typical peers. They can help typical peers have more positive attitudes towards children with disabilities and just all people in general. So we as an agency really believe that inclusion is the best model for all children, and that's why we're really working towards making that a reality for all the children who live in our 4 counties. Next slide. Okay, on this slide, we are going to watch a little video about social emotional learning, because if we don't have a strong foundation of understanding the importance of social emotional learning, then it's really hard to talk about how to navigate challenging behaviors. So go ahead and show that, Valerie. I think you have to share your sound. I always mess this up. It's so annoying.
Give me one moment.
I always have to stop the share and then reshare, click the boxes. or click the boxes. And
Actually, I don't think you have to do that.
I know, I am not tech savvy. I would think that I would have it figured out each time, but I really don't.
Okay, I shared sound. Let's push play and see what happens. Can you hear that?
There's a lot of
Yes.
talk these days about SEL,
Thanks, Valerie.
social emotional learning. But what exactly is it? Social emotional learning is the process of learning social and emotional skills, and it's just as important as learning reading or math. This learning process is most effective when it begins early and continues through high school. Social emotional skills are essential for success in school, work, and life. With SEL, students learn to manage their own emotions and behaviors, have empathy and show care and concern for others, solve problems effectively, make responsible decisions, and maintain healthy relationships. Students learn to recognize what's happening inside them and to be aware of their emotions, which helps them deal with strong emotions and impulsive behaviors. It helps them
Will you
stop,
pause for 1 second,
breath,
Valerie?
and think about a situation.
Okay, so I think what's going on for people who can't hear, if you go back to that channel navigation part on the bottom where it says mute original audio, you'll have to unmute it to make sure that you can hear Valerie's audio. So make sure that you've unmuted the original audio. Okay, now let's try it again.
Situation before acting. Students learn to identify others' emotions and perspectives, which helps them empathize and show compassion, no matter who they are or what their background is. It's not difficult to imagine how this is important in the classroom and in life. Students learn to solve problems in peaceful ways and communicate assertively about what they need or want. This helps them get along with other students and get the help they need from adults. When students learn to make responsible decisions about their lives and their future, things can turn out better. Research shows social emotional learning makes a difference. Students who participate in SEL do better academically, have improved attitudes and behaviors, and act in delinquent or disruptive ways less often. In the United States, students with strong social-emotional competence are twice as likely to earn a college degree and nearly 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by age 25. Just as important, students who are socially and emotionally competent have more friends. This means they're more likely to feel connected to school and do well, and less likely to be left out or bullied. Simply put, by participating in social-emotional learning, students learn the skills to succeed in every facet of school and the rest of their lives.
Awesome, thank you, Valerie. And we can zoom to the next slide. Okay, so this slide just goes over what is what we would consider quote unquote normal social emotional development. So really what this slide highlights is that a lot of these behaviors that can sometimes feel and seem really challenging are typical behaviors for children. So if you look at that 2 to 3 year old age range, you'll see that they're showing an increasing variety of emotions. They get upset when there are major changes in the routine. They may seem concerned about personal needs and can act selfishly. That is totally typical for a 2 to 3 year old. Now, we're not saying that, you know, that's lovely and wonderful to deal with on a daily basis, but some of these behaviors we just need to expect given the age and developmental needs of each child. For a 3 to 4 year old, they can sometimes work out conflicts with other children, but we can't expect them to always be independently doing that without adult help. We would expect them to be able to use words to communicate their needs instead of screaming, grabbing, or whining. But we know that when a child is feeling escalated and really frustrated, they are going to be going to that screening, grabbing, whining behavior because they're not able to really process and be their best selves. If you are working with kiddos and you are noticing that they're in a 4 to 5 year old class, but they seem to be more aligned with what we're seeing under the 2 to 3 year old kiddos, then that's something that you could talk to your director or talk to the family about and possibly refer them out to be evaluated by us to see if they do qualify for services. But a lot of times, you know, we need to make sure that those behaviors are happening consistently over a long period of time and not just for a couple of months or a couple of weeks here and there. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to jump into our next section and really talk about what behavior means. Next slide. So in this video, we are going to watch and see what challenging behavior or what is challenging behavior. So you can go ahead and play that.
Let's look at a scene in an early childhood environment in which the teachers, like all of us, face difficult behaviors and at times respond in ways that don't help the child learn more positive behaviors.
Joshua, you don't have to go to sleep, but remember you have to stay on your mat. It's time to rest and relax. And playing with Wyatt is not a choice. Joshua, turn back around the other way and go lay on your bed. Look at me. Wyatt is trying to rest also. We don't want to mess with him. Wyatt is trying to rest, Joshua. He doesn't want to play. All right, Joshua. Do we need to help you get on your bed? Tell Miss Leslie what you want. I'm not going to come back over there, Joshua, if you're kicking Miss Debbie. If you would like me to come back over there, you need to ask.
We'll take another look at this sequence at the end of the program to examine what might be done in future situations like this to help the child learn more
Okay,
positive
thank you, Valerie.
behavior.
That's good.
Meanwhile, let's begin.
Voice is very soothing. I feel like it could help me fall asleep if I was having a difficult time. Okay, so in that video, we saw a little snippet of what challenging behaviors they're experiencing in their site. So if you could go ahead and put in the chat some challenging behaviors that maybe you're currently working with kiddos, or challenging behaviors that you've worked with in the past.
My biggest behaviors with these kids is being cooped up for the last almost 2 years. Social behaviors, big time, with all ages.
It is hard to be home for 2 years and then all of a sudden have to be in a new place with new rules and new people. I hear you.
Yep, the young ones are used to being home with mom and kids are back in school. So all those behaviors that's in that big circle is what I'm dealing with.
Emily, I see some other screaming to communicate is always a big one. Tantrums at drop off, hitting teachers and other children, saying no and running away. And Allison says she has dealt with that situation in the video. I'm sure a lot of people have. Nap time is often not a very popular time. Screaming and running away from you, biting, hitting, clearing shelves, throwing toys, acting out due to speech delays, hitting, kicking. Transitions is also a big one. Not wanting to follow directions, kids getting frustrated really quickly. Some kids who are pushing other kids down, refuse to come back and check on the one they hurt, say they're sorry. Oh, we got lots of good ones in here. Kid says no to everything, gets mad and destroys the room, running out of class, whining, intentionally repeating a behavior that you just redirected another child from doing, turns things into weapons and pretends to shoot. Let's see, a lot of you are saying the same kinds of behaviors. Those are things that we see also. Staying quiet and on their mat during rest time, just like we saw. Pinching. Circle time restlessness and rest time too. Circle time can be challenging for some kids. Those are great.
Yeah, those are really great. Thank you for sharing those all, and we'll hopefully be able to help you problem solve how to approach these challenging behaviors as we go through our presentation. Okay, Valerie, next slide.
Let's look at a
Okay. So the important thing to know about challenging behaviors is that they are actions of children that that parents or teachers would like to decrease. They can range from small challenges to full-blown tantrums. And a lot of these behaviors are pretty typical and age appropriate, unfortunately. So a lot of these behaviors include hitting, kicking, biting, crying, yelling, tantrums, ignoring, refusing, and being defiant. So a lot of those behaviors that you all were listing in the chat are all age appropriate, but we definitely want to help you work on decreasing those for sure. Next slide. And so it's important when we are working with these challenging behaviors on examining our own personal attitudes about the behaviors that the kiddos around us are engaging in. So this is an opportunity for us to do a little bit more self-reflection. We're going to be doing a hot button activity where we're going to be thinking about what behaviors push your buttons. What are like the one or two behaviors that really bother you on a personal level? Like I know some people, it's biting. For some people, it's spitting. I know with my 3-year-old right now, it's him being non-compliant. I tell him what not to do and he immediately does it. So what is the behavior that really pushes your buttons and how do they make you feel? Do they make you feel angry? Do they make you feel powerless? Do they make you feel uncomfortable because you don't know what to do? And then think about how your feelings impact your relationship with the children who are exhibiting these behaviors. Are you able to engage in a positive teacher-child relationship with them when you're thinking those thoughts? So I believe that you all were sent an email earlier today with an attachment of the hot button activity that you should be able to access. And I think we're just going to give you a few minutes to go ahead and do a little bit of self-reflection on that. And that was our plan, right?
Yeah, so Valerie, if you want to click on that link so that people can see it. If you got your copy of the Spanish slideshow, there should be a link to the Spanish one as well. Thanks, Valerie's putting the links to the documents in the chat.
So if I were to use my own child as an example for this, I would say the behavior that pushes my button would be non-compliant. So I tell him, face forward during dinner and he's swiveling his chair around, or, be nice to your brother, and then he smacks him up across the head. Those are the types of things he does. And then how does that make me feel? Well, it makes me feel very angry, very frustrated, and, you know, sad that he won't do what I'm telling him to do. And then how does that impact the relationship that I have with him, my feelings? Well, if I'm constantly mad and frustrated and upset with him, then I can't really be a good mom. You know, I'm always looking for him doing negative things. I'm not paying enough attention to the good things he's doing. So that's just my own personal example. I think we'll give you all one more minute to think it through, to do a little bit more reflection on how behaviors impact your relationships, and then we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, thank you, Valerie. And then Anne, I think I'm passing the mic to you.
Okay, so Valerie, if you want to, oh no, that's right. Sorry. Okay, so why do challenging behaviors occur? So it has a message. So when a child is having a challenging behavior, it's because they're trying to communicate something. So they might be trying to communicate that they're bored, they're sad, maybe you hurt their feelings, they might need some attention. They might not like something, they don't feel good. Banush, no, we're not submitting the hot button sheet. It's just for your own work. Oh, sorry, Emily. I need to quit looking at that. So it's also used when children don't have the social or communication skills that they need to engage in more appropriate interactions. So kids who are having a difficult time with language, they're not able to communicate what they want, what they need, and so they end up having to use behavior to communicate what it is that they want or need. And a child would not tantrum if they had the skills at that moment to do otherwise. So they might have the skill when they're calm, but maybe when they're really upset, they're just not able to access that language, to access the tools and skills that they have to be able to communicate more appropriately. And the fourth reason is because it works for the child. So if they're screaming a lot when they're at the store because they want a toy, and then you go ahead and give it to them so that they'll be quiet, well, it worked. So they're probably going to do it again. All right, next slide. This kids will do well if they can. So I love this quote by Dr. Green. It's the belief that if kids could do well, they would do well. In other words, if the kid has or had the skills to exhibit adaptive behavior, he wouldn't be exhibiting challenging behavior. That's because doing well is always preferable to not doing well. Okay, Valerie. So the idea is that children will do good when they can. They want to have appropriate behavior. So I like the way that this slide kind of helps you think about behavior. So if a child doesn't know the alphabet, what do? We teach them the alphabet. We don't expect them to be born knowing the alphabet. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach them. We put them in swim lessons, or we teach them ourselves. If a child doesn't know how to tie their shoes, we teach them. If a child doesn't know how to brush their teeth, we teach them. And how about if a child doesn't know how to behave? What do? Well, a lot of times we just punish them. But we want to be able to teach them, because they just are not born with those innate skills on how to behave. They have to be taught. Next slide, Valerie. So this talks about how we can reframe our thoughts. So instead of thinking, gosh, she is just trying to control everything, kind of reframe that and think about what is that child trying to communicate? Well, she wants more independence. So the next one says, he is trying to get my attention all the time. Instead, you could reframe that to, he might be having a hard day and need to have a positive connection with someone. So a lot of these is just in how you're thinking about it. Are you thinking about it in a negative way, or are you trying to think about what that child is trying to accomplish through that behavior? So I want to see if you can do the next couple, and you can put your ideas in the chat. So she's doing that on purpose and she knows better. How could you reframe that into a more positive thought? And then the other one is, he never listens. What's a different way that you could think about that? So she's still learning, or she wants attention, good or bad. She's needing some extra attention. She's using the skills she has right now. She's doing what she knows is best. Her skill levels diminish when upset or triggered. Yeah, you guys got it. Nice. She's learning her boundaries. Might be seeking help or love. Really likes that activity. How can we make this happen in a yes way? I love that. He's easily distracted. I need to rephrase what I'm asking. Right. Think about what kinds of changes you can make to help that child. Good. Need to make sure that he's understanding my words. So yeah, so she's doing that on purpose and knows better. That might be the only way that she knows how to do that. She probably doesn't know better. And if we taught her a better way, she might be able to do better in that situation. And he never listens. Well, there's lots of reasons that kids might not listen. And one of them is one that we see a lot in the kids that Emily and I work with, is that they might have some problems with auditory processing. They may have a hard time processing language. And so it can appear as if they're not listening because they may not be able to process all of the language that you're giving. So maybe something that you can do is simplify your language, get down on their level so that they can see you. So good, you guys are coming up with lots of great ideas. All right, next slide, Valerie. Okay, so this slide talks about the 4 functions of behavior. So when we think about behavior, we're trying to get at that idea of, why is this child having the behavior? Not just the fact that they're having the behavior, but we can't really change that behavior until we know why they're doing it. And that's what the function means. It's the why behind it. So the first one says sensory. So some kids have a need for sensory input. So it provides stimulation to the pleasure zone in their brain. So they're probably not doing it for the other reasons listed here. They're just doing it because it feels good. So maybe they're jumping up and down or running around in circles or flapping their arms. Or touching the walls and everything that is around them. They like the way it feels. It's creating some pleasure in their brain. In escape means they're trying to get away from something. So if you're moving from a favorite activity to an activity that maybe they don't like as well, they might start engaging in a behavior so that they can avoid having to do that activity. And the next one is attention. So we often see attention-seeking behaviors. So these kids are having challenging behaviors because they want somebody to pay attention to them, whether it's a peer, whether it's an adult. So they might be screaming or pushing or anything that they can do to get any kind of attention. Whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't really matter to them. They just want some attention. So in that case, if you're actually giving them a lot of attention, then you're reinforcing that behavior. So for example, if a child is screaming really loud and you run over there and start giving some of them attention and telling them to quit doing that, well, they just got what they wanted. They got you to come over to them and start interacting with them. So if that is the function of their behavior, you do not want to give them attention in that case because that is reinforcing that challenging behavior. And the next one is tangible. And this is when a child wants something. He sees another child playing with a toy. He's wants something, like let's say during circle time, that there's something, another toy in a different area that he wants. He or she might be engaging in a challenging behavior to try to get at something. They want it. They want it now. And I'm sure you all have kids in your classrooms who are like that. Okay, so Valerie, next slide. Oh, sorry, Emily. Were you? Oh, no.
No, you're good. So we are going to practice identifying in the next slide some of these, what we call ABCs of data, so that we can really understand why a child is engaging in a problem behavior. Because if we understand why, then we can understand what we need to do in response. So when we're taking ABC data, we're taking antecedent behavior consequence data. So A stands for antecedent. So that means what happened before. So where and what. So maybe the kiddo, the problem behavior that we're thinking of usually happens in the block area and it happens in the morning time. Then the B stands for behavior. So what happens during? What does the child do and what does the child say? And for this B section, we really want to be specific. So if we're thinking of maybe the problem behavior is tantruming, what exactly does tantruming look like? Maybe they're screaming, maybe they're flopping to the ground, they're pounding their fists into the ground, they're kicking their legs around. You can't just say a word like tantruming or, just something really vague. We want it to be as specific as possible so that we can really understand what we're looking for. And then the C stands for consequence. So what happens after? What does the adult say or what does the adult do? So in Anne's example, if the child is engaging in those tantrum behaviors and the adult runs over to, tell them no or to ask them what's wrong, then the adult is giving them a lot of attention, and we can understand that possibly the child is engaging in these behaviors because they're seeking adult attention. So Valerie, we can go ahead and go over to the next slide. And we are going to watch a clip. And I believe that you all got in your handouts a copy of that ABC form. But you can just, if you don't have access to that right now, if you have a piece of paper handy, you could just do a quick like A, B, C with columns. And we're going to watch this clip. And we would love for you to practice taking some ABC data. So the antecedent, what happened before, what happened during the behavior, and then what happened as a consequence. So Valerie, you can go ahead and show the video.
We don't have some more. Don't forget you left those things out there. Throw it in the trash can. I don't have any more peaches. Sit down. Listen, these are dirty. I don't have any more peaches. Would you like some banana?
Zachary, Brianna, and Ryan, go wash your
Here
hands.
is. I'm sorry, Joshua. I didn't throw them before. They're dirty. No, Josh, they're dirty. Joshua, would you like to get up and have a banana? Miss Leslie, since you're here, Joshua,
Huh? Oh, they don't coincide. Sarah,
I'll take
I'll
it.
take them to the shed. They don't, okay.
Joshua, you want to get up and have a banana, or do you want to go back to the classroom? Okay, we're going back to the classroom. Quiet, come in here. I'm sorry that you just fell on the floor. And I'm sorry that you didn't get a nap. Joshua, that really hurt.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. I can't help but smile. I've been in that place. I feel so terrible for her, but man, kids sometimes can be pretty funny when they're naughty. Okay, so on the next slide, we'll take a look at a filled out ABC chart. Peaches. Okay, so after watching the video, this is what we came up with. So for antecedent, what happened before? They were eating snack at the table and his bowl fell on the ground. So then we're talking about the behavior and the consequence section. For number one, he asked for more peaches. The adult said no more peaches, took the bowl and peaches away from him. So then he flopped to the ground and started crying. The adult asked if he would like a banana. He's like, absolutely not. He was screaming. So then the teacher asked if he would like a banana or go back to the classroom. He says, shut up to the teacher. The teacher picked him up and took him to the other side of the class. He proceeded to kick, hit, cry, and scream. He was throwing toys. The teacher put him in a semi-enclosed area in the classroom. He was crying and throwing toys. The teacher told him it hurt and started to pick up the toys. He was watching her throwing toys, wanted to clear the toys from the shelf. The teacher moved the toys on the shelf, and then he continued to throw the final few toys and went to hide in the house. So if we're thinking back on that, the 4 functions of behavior chart that Anne had talked about a few slides ago, we talked about how sometimes the functions of behavior are sensory. They can be escape, attention seeking, and tangible. So based on what we saw in this video, what do you think is the function of his behavior? Do you think that it was sensory seeking? Do you think that it was escape from snack? Do you think it was attention seeking, whether that was adult attention or peer attention? Or do you think it was tangible? You can go ahead and put it in the chat, and I'm seeing some tangibles pop up. Yeah, I'm seeing everyone's putting tangible, and I would agree. I think that this episode of problem behaviors was tangible related. He was trying to access more peaches. Was he appropriately asking for more peaches and appropriately asking to get his needs met? No. So if we were going in there to help him and help the team work on the skill, we would want to be teaching him how to appropriately request what he wants without getting so upset. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. And Anne, I'm passing the mic back off to you.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is preventative strategies, what to do before the behavior happens. So we can prevent so many challenging behaviors based on kind of how we're interacting with kids, how we're setting up our environment. So Valerie, let's go to the next slide. So this says what the research tells us. Children are less likely to engage in problem behavior when they know what to do, how to do it, and what is expected. So that means we have to have very clear expectations. We have to show kids how to do it. And they have to have the skill to be able to do it. All right, Valerie. So we're going to talk about several different strategies that help in preventing and managing behaviors. So all of these strategies are great preventative strategies, and they're also great to use during a behavior. So if a child is already engaging in those challenging behaviors, we're still going to use a lot of these same strategies, but we might add in a few more. So the first one that we're going to talk about is to be engaged. So we can move to the next slide. So being engaged is one of the most important things that you can do. If you are engaged with a child, they're going to have a better relationship with you. They're going to listen to you better. So these are some different ways that you can be engaged. So getting down on the child's level. I noticed in that video where the child was on the sleeping mat and he got off, you could see him laying on the floor, but the adult was standing straight up. All you could see were her feet. So it's really important to get down on the floor, squat down, sit on the floor, be at that child's level so that you can look eye to eye with them. That's a lot less intimidating for kids. Give access to the child's preferences when able. So if you know that they really have a favorite toy, give them a chance during the day to be able to play with that. They might not be able to play with it all day, but try to find some times when they can access some of those favorite activities when you're able to. The next one is following a child's lead. So that is really important because it signals to children that what they're doing is important, that you're joining in with them. They are constantly having adults tell them what to do, how to do it, when to do it. They end up not having a lot of choice and control in their life. So when they're able to lead the play and you join in, it just signals to them that they're important, you care, you're interested in what they're doing. And they're going to get really excited about that. Even just a little bit of time like that can go a long way. You get a lot of bang for your buck. Also comment on what they're doing. So if they're sitting down playing with their trains or building some blocks, that's another way that you can show that you're really interested in them and what they're doing. Oh, it looks like you're building a castle. Tell me more about that. Be playful and use an animated voice. So if you're just going to talk to them like this, that's a lot less exciting than if you're talking to them like this, like, what'd you do today? Use your hands, use that animated voice. They're going to pay attention to you, I promise. And place yourself in areas or around children that might be more likely for problem behaviors to occur. If you know there's an area in your classroom, like let's say the sensory table, that always ends up with kids throwing sand at each other or grabbing toys from each other, make sure that there's an adult placed in that area to help when problems come up, that you can kind of help them problem solve that. Or if there are specific children that often engage in challenging behaviors, have somebody be near that child so that they can jump in quickly and intervene before something gets really out of hand. All right, Valerie. The next thing that we're going to talk about is setting clear expectations. So it says, remind me of the rules. Remember, we keep ourselves safe, so go up the steps and down the slide. Sometimes kids don't know what you're talking about when you're giving them a direction. So keep it simple. Use it, child-friendly language that they're going to understand, and break things down into smaller steps. Okay, next slide. So here's some things about setting clear expectations. So don't assume that he or she knows what you want. So be specific. So use our walking feet with quiet mouths. That's pretty specific. You're telling them exactly what to do. First clean up, then outside time. Speak in positive terms. So instead of saying, don't color on the table, you could say, color on the paper, please. So instead of telling them what you don't want them to do, you want to replace that by telling them specifically what they can do, what behavior they should be doing. Because if you just tell them not to do something, that's not really teaching them the skill that they should be doing. The next one says to reduce your language demands. So some kids have a hard time processing a lot of language. So keep your language simple. So instead of saying something like, we need to be quiet because we're in circle time and it's hard for everyone to hear the story when it's so loud. That's a lot of language for a child to process. So you could just simplify that by saying, quiet voices, please, and maybe adding a gesture to it. And then by asking a question, you are giving the child the opportunity to say no. So think about how you're phrasing things. So instead of saying, are you ready to go do art? Well, you just open up that possibility that they can say no to that. And then what are you going to do? So instead, just say, it's time to go to art. Instead of saying, do you want to give your friend a turn? You could say, I'll set the timer for your friend's turn. So you're not really giving them that option to say no. You're just kind of telling them what needs to happen. Should we clean up before lunch? Let's clean up for lunch. So keep the language simple, clear expectations. Okay, Valerie. So one of the things that we use in our program, and I know a lot of you are using it as well, is PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. So they break their rules, these are their classroom rules, so into 3 areas. So be safe, be a worker, and be friendly. And then under each of those, list specific things like being safe would be using your walking feet, holding hands to go to the bus, using safe and gentle hands, and asking for help. So these rules can be posted in your classroom, and then you reinforce when kids are doing the right thing by constantly noticing and commenting like, oh, you're using a calm body, nice job, or you're using your listening ears to listen to circle time or the story. Okay, Valerie. The next thing that we can do to prevent challenging behaviors is to offer choices. So do you want breakfast in the orange bowl or the green bowl? I talked a little bit earlier about how kids often feel like they don't have very much control over their lives. They don't like being told what to do all the time. So this is one easy way that we can let them feel like they're in control of the decisions that they make by offering them choices. Do you want the blue truck or the red truck? Do you want to play in the sensory area or in the block area? Do you want to draw a picture of the hippo or color the picture of the elephant? So constantly just giving them those choices makes them feel empowered and independent and makes them feel like they have a choice. So if they have more opportunities to practice that independence and make decisions for themselves, you will see fewer challenging behaviors when it is time for you to ask them or kind of give them an adult-directed instruction. Okay, and then the next slide is continuing to talk about these choices. So when you offer choices, you want to make sure that you're okay with either of the choices. So don't give them a choice that you're not okay with because they might choose that. And if they choose that, you need to let that be okay. So instead of saying, are you ready for art? You can say it's time for art. Do you want to paint a truck or a dinosaur? You can use objects and visuals to help with choice making. So if you have a child who's not processing language very well, hold up the objects. That gives them more information. Or you can use visuals such as pictures. Which one do you want to do first? Brush teeth or get dressed? Right? It's not a choice of whether they're going to do those. They are going to do them, but they have the choice in which order they're going to do them. All right, next slide. What if they don't make a choice, right? This happens frequently. And then you're like, oh, I don't know what to do now. So first, you're going to give them some time to process. Some kids need some extra processing time. So give them a minute to think about what their choices are, think about what they want to do, give them some time to process that information. Consider if an alternative choice that they give is okay with you. So maybe they come up with a third choice that wasn't one that you offered, but you still feel okay with it. You can go ahead and let them make that choice. And when necessary, if they just will not choose, then you can choose for them. You can just say, you can choose or I can choose for you. Which one would you like? And even that's a choice. All right, the next section is talking about visuals. So this is going to be a pretty big section. We love visuals. So visuals help show kids what's going to happen. We can use visuals for a lot of different reasons, and I'm going to show you a bunch of examples of visuals. These are things that you can make on your own. You can take photographs of things in your environment. You can cut out pictures, if you wanted to have visuals for food choices, you could cut things out of boxes, or there's lots of programs on the internet where you can pick some visuals to download and print out. Okay, next slide. So we're going to talk about the benefits of using visuals. So regular routines, when presented visually, can be taught at a very young age. So helping kids understand what's going to happen in their day can really alleviate anxiety and just kind of help kids kind of know what to expect. A lot of times kids act up at those transitions because they don't know what's coming next and it seems abrupt. And so we can reduce that by kind of helping kids learn what their schedule is. They help assist children in knowing exactly what is expected of them. Visuals remain present after words are spoken. So I might say something and somebody might hear it, but then it's gone. If they have a visual, then it's always there for them to keep looking at. Visuals provide another mode for learning expectations and new skills. It's especially useful for kids with language processing difficulties. And what we know about the population of children that we serve who are on the autism spectrum, they learn differently. They are extremely visual learners, and they have a very difficult time with auditory processing. So visuals are a really big strategy for all kids, but especially some kids like children on the autism spectrum. Visual strategies can be used to prevent challenging behaviors. Visuals provide the child with cues while learning to be less dependent on adults. Okay. Next slide, there are different types of visuals. So it depends on where a child is developmentally as to what kind of visual you might use with them. Younger children or kids who are pretty significantly delayed, they might need an actual object. So you see the picture of the diaper, you might just need to show them, the cup for snack time or something from circle time that signifies circle time. Offering those choices physically with the actual objects that might be at the level that they're at. Or the next level up might be taking photographs. And so that's really easy to do. Take pictures around your classroom of different things. The next level would be these line drawings. So black and white line drawings. Those are more symbolic, a little more abstract for kids. So often a little bit older children or just developmentally, if they're kind of up in that 3 to 5 year age range, they can probably get line drawings. So after you've decided what kind of visual you need, we're going to talk about some different kinds of visuals. So this first one is a first then board. So these can be used for a variety of reasons. They can help with transitions from one activity to another. So in this example, first clean up, then circle time. So they can see that in the picture. They know that they have to do picture A before they get to do picture B. So the way to teach this is to have something that's really motivating to them in the then section and have something less desirable in the first section, so that they know, like, yep, first you have to clean up and then you get to go outside. This can really help kids with transitions and just kind of knowing what's coming next. Can break routines into smaller steps. So for example, first grab your napkin, then throw it in the garbage. So if you need to break tasks into smaller steps, this is a great way to kind of start that introduction. Also encourage children to complete tasks they might not enjoy in order to do a more enjoyable task. So I already talked about that one. So first clean up and then you can play on the tablet. So if they know something exciting is coming up, they're much more likely to do that undesirable behavior. So next we're going to talk about visual schedules. So using a visual schedule at school provides young children with predictability. So knowing what activity or routine is coming up and when, and also consistency. So the schedule of activities or routines is the same. So they're learning that daily routine within your classroom. Visual schedules help children know what their day will look like by letting them know when activities or routines will happen. So we've got two schedules here. One is horizontal and one is vertical. So you're always going to do your schedules from left to right or top to bottom. And they go through each one and they can, some of them are removable. So once they do, this bottom one was an example of a circle time routine that I did in my class. And so as soon as we sang the hello song, we took that off so they could visually see what was next. And next it was a song. So we'd sing our song and then we would take off that one. And next would be our learning activity, etc. Okay, so the next slide is visuals for specific routines. So we've got first then, we've got schedules. Now we have visuals for routines. So this could be a hand washing routine. It could be a toileting routine. So this one at the top is a hand washing routine. So that is, instead of expecting children just to know all the steps involved in washing hands, you can see there's quite a few steps to that. Then you could actually add on some more for drying hands and throwing the towel in the garbage. So this way they can visually see all these steps and you can break those down and teach them individually to kids. There's another one for going to the bathroom. There's another one for a bedtime routine that parents might use at home, all the different steps that kids need to go through to get ready for bed. All right, our next slide talks about timers. Timers are also visuals, and we have different types of timers. So we have digital timers on the left. We have sand timers, which are pretty popular in a lot of the classrooms that I've been to. And then I love this one on the right because it actually shows with that color. Kids have a hard time understanding the concept of time until they're really like 5, 6, 7 years old. So this kind of decreases as the minutes go by. You see less and less red, so they can kind of get them an idea of how time is working and when their time is going to be up. And then it dings, so it has an auditory cue as well for when their time is up. Right. Our next one is about choice boards. So this is really great in classrooms too. A lot of kids go into class, they are not really sure what to do. They're kind of wandering around the classroom, not really sure which activity to engage in. And when kids are not engaged in activities, that's when you start seeing an increase in challenging behaviors. So here's some examples of some different choice boards. The one on the left is showing different areas of the room. So there's like a dramatic play area, an art area, a sensory table, and then it has different little clips for each one that shows how many kids can actually be in that center at a time. Because what else happens is if you get a lot of kids in a small area, there's likely going to be some challenging behaviors happening as kids are too close together, pushing, having sharing difficulties. So you can kind of even that out by only having a certain number of kids in each of those centers. It also helps kids to have to plan and choose what it is they're going to do. The one on the right is just some pictures. So you could have some different choices, maybe start simple with like 3 choices and let them choose which area they want to go to or which activity they'd like to do. All right. The next one is talking about play scripts. So these can be used for individual activities. So they've chosen their activity that they want to be engaged in, but now they're not really sure how to play with toys. Some kids they don't really have those functional play skills yet. And so what do? They start throwing them around or hitting kids with them just because they don't know how to play. Some kids have to be taught how to play. So these play scripts, this one is for, the one on the left is for playing with a doll. And so it shows different actions that they can do with that. So having an adult go through this and model some of these actions for kids so that they know what the pictures mean, what that kind of play looks like, can be really helpful to kids. The one on the right has to do with a doctor kit. So it has some different activities that they could do with the doctor kit. So if you have things like that, especially in your dramatic play area, those are kind of more open-ended activities where kids have to be more creative and come up with their own ideas, then that can really help. All right. Social stories. Social stories can also be really helpful. These are things that you can make on your own. If you have a child in our program, it's something that we can help with as well. You can get ideas on the internet. There's lots of social stories already written up on the internet. So social stories are individualized short stories that explain social situations to children and help them learn socially appropriate behavior and responses. So they're usually written in the first person from the child's perspective, using positive, reassuring language to answer the who, what, where, when, and why of the situation and or target behavior. So Valerie, if you want to click on the I can share and take turns in English, I'm just going to show you a few pages just so you get an idea of what this looks like. So this one's called I can share and take turns. So ideally it's great if you can have a picture of the actual child there, but it's not necessary. So let's go to the next page. Valerie, just pick another one. So it's written in the first person. So I can be friendly and share my toys and take turns. Or I can be friendly and trade toys with the other children. Let's do another one. I can use my words and ask nicely, or I can use my manners and say please. So it's a story, and they're learning different skills about all the things that they can do in this scenario. Okay, Valerie, you can get out of that. And the next thing that we're going to talk about is transitions. So transitions is often a very difficult time during the day. A lot of kids have a really difficult time with transitions. So this says, help me know when something is going to end or change. So one thing that you can do is prep kids for transition. So this says 5 more minutes until dinner. So if you're giving them the information that a transition is coming up, that can be much more helpful than just being told, you know what, right now, I know you're not finished, but you have to clean up because we have to go eat right now. Well, that makes kids really upset because they're still enjoying their activity. They haven't really completed it. If you give them a warning, it gives them the opportunity to kind of wrap their head around what's coming, to start finishing up what they're doing, and it will help make that transition hopefully go more smoothly. On the next slide, I've listed some strategies to support transitions. So one is that you can use a timer. And so you can set the timer and say, you can play for 5 more minutes, and then we're going to clean up and go have snack. So maybe start with a 5-minute warning and then a 2-minute warning, maybe even a 1-minute warning. So several warnings can be really helpful. You're going to use first, then language. So first pick up your toys, then we can have a snack. Make the transition fun. So if you need to come in from outside, try making that time into some games to make it more fun for kids. So we can skip to the door, or let's pretend to be dinosaurs on our way back to class. Okay, and then using visual support. So schedules, first then boards, cue cards, anything that you can show the kid visually what is going to be happening next, thinking about that transition. Okay, and then the next slide, I have a few more. So ask a child if they would like to bring a transition object or toy with them. Sometimes kids have a really hard time just letting go of the toy that they're playing with, but if they had something to carry with them to the next activity, that can be really helpful for a lot of kids. So you could say, would you like to bring your fire truck to circle time? I bet he would like to sit next to you during circle time. And you may have to manage that once they get to circle time if they're getting too distracted. But some kids just kind of need that little transition object. You could sing a silly or a familiar song. There's many songs online, a cleanup song or make up a song for the transition. Songs, all kids love songs. And so the more songs you can use during those transition times, the better. And then give your child a job to do during the transition. Children like to be helpers. So they could help set the table, or they could get the musical instruments out at circle time. You know, if it's nap time, they could be helping to get those mats out. Remember, the idea is to keep them busy, keep them engaged. So the more that they're helping with that, the more likely they are to be happy and not causing any challenging behaviors. Okay, so the next one is about positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement research shows that it works much better than negative reinforcement. So instead of, like we talked about this earlier, instead of telling kids what you don't want them to do, reinforce the positive behaviors that they're doing. That lets them know, like, yes, I see you're doing that correctly. You're doing what I want you to do. You're doing what you should be doing. And they're going to love that praise. Who doesn't love praise? And then they're going to be much more likely to engage in that behavior after that. So always catch a child being good. Next slide. I got a little ahead of myself. I already talked about some of this, but so you want to tell the child very specifically what you saw or heard that you liked. So instead of saying just a simple good job, they don't really know what they're doing a good job at. So be really specific. Like, you are being so kind by giving your friend a turn. That's very specific about what they did a good job with. So be very specific, catch them being good and doing the desired behavior. You can also use gestures. So you could do high fives, hugs, fist bumps, thumbs up, just to let kids know you're watching and that they're doing it well. You can use token boards and classroom reinforcers. So token boards are things that they can earn. So they might earn like 5 stickers, and then after they get the 5th sticker, they earn something. Or a classroom reinforcers might be, see, I'm going to show you one in just a minute. So I'm going to show you this token board on the next slide. And so it says, I am working for, sorry, Valerie. So this child's going to be working for some time on an iPad. So he already has 2 stars. He still needs 3 more. And so every time you catch that child doing what he should be doing, you're going to give him a star. And then when he gets that 5th star, then he gets to play on the iPad. So when you first start teaching this, are they going to be able to just make it 5 times? Probably not. You're probably going to have to start with fewer, like 1. If you do this, you're going to get a reinforcer. And then you're going to gradually add more and more before they get that reinforcer, whatever it is. All right, the next slide talks about a whole classroom reinforcer. So you have those reinforcers for individual kids, but you can also do a classroom reinforcer. So in this example, we are working towards, so maybe your classroom is working towards a classroom movie or a popcorn day or a dance party. It can be whatever you and the kids come up with that you know would be really reinforcing. So as you're catching kids in the classroom doing what they should be doing, they get to go put a little colored pom-pom in the jar. And then when you fill the whole jar up, then you get to do whatever the reinforcer was, the popcorn party or the dance party or whatever. So in order to kind of get this going and start teaching it, you don't want them to have to wait too long to get the reinforcer. So start with a small jar so that they start getting the idea. And then once they get the idea, it's really going to take off. And it's just a great way to reinforce all the classroom rules in your classroom and to teach children that when they're doing those, that they're doing a great job. Okay, we made it through all the visuals. It is time for our 10-minute break. So you can turn your videos off. You can go have a snack. It is 7:11. We will come back at 7:21.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had a chance to take a little break. Hopefully step away from the computer. We'll go ahead and jump back in. Okay, so the next section that we're going to be talking about is managing behavior. So we're going to be talking about specific strategies that we can use while a child is engaging in problem behaviors. Okay, so here are a few strategies that we would recommend that you all try when you are in the moment. The number one thing to make sure that you're trying to do is to stay calm. I know that it can be so hard to keep your cool when kiddos are engaging in really difficult problem behaviors like spitting or hitting or kicking or running around. But the more escalated you get, the more escalated the child will get. So the best thing that you can do is to just take a deep breath and try to stay as calm as possible, even though on the inside you might be like, what the heck is going on? This is like the apocalypse. The next thing to do is to make sure that you remember that all behavior is communication, and try to kind of leave what they're doing where it is and try to think, okay, what are they trying to communicate to me right now? What do they need? What do they want? And how can I help them get that in a more appropriate way? If a child hurts another child, it's important that you take care of the kiddo who has been hurt. So that focuses your attention on the child who needs help and needs to be comforted, instead of the child who is possibly seeking those adult attention. You want to make sure that you are encouraging the child who hurt the other kiddo to try to make the situation better, like maybe getting them a Band-Aid or getting them an ice pack, if that seems like a good strategy to use in the moment. If you asking a kiddo to go get you a Band-Aid or to go get you an ice pack kind of resets them and makes them continue to escalate, then I wouldn't bother doing that. If a kiddo is running around the room, you can encourage them to use their walking feet. So going back to what Anne had talked about earlier, instead of saying stop running or don't run, you want to encourage them to do what you want them to do. So use your walking feet, maybe have a slow body. And then you can give them two choices of activities that they could be engaged with. So maybe a kiddo's running around and you can say, hey, Sam, I need to see your walking feet. Do you want to walk to the Play-Doh table or do you want to walk to the sensory table? So you're giving them a forced choice, two options that will hopefully get them engaged so that they'll stop engaging in that running behavior. If there are outbursts at group time, you should try to remind them of the group time rules and have them sit close to you or to another adult, not as a punishment, but we just call this tool adult proximity. So sometimes having adult proximity can really kind of prevent bad behaviors from happening. And then you can immediately give them lots and lots of praise for sitting quietly. So going back to what Anne had talked about earlier, you could tell them, I love how you're sitting on your bottom, your eyes are on the action, your hands are in your lap. Wow, you were doing such a great job listening at circle. So labeling those specific things that you want to see them doing. And if a child is being destructive, you should have them help you clean it up when they seem to be de-escalated. But if every time you ask them to clean up, they start to get escalated again, you may not bother with having them help clean up. Maybe the expectation is that they clean up two things or one thing instead of cleaning up the entire mess. Okay, next slide, Valerie. So here are some more strategies that you can try. If a child is throwing things and other kids are in danger, then this is when you would want to do what we call a room clear. So you would clear the area of all the other kids to keep people safe. You would then find a calming strategy that works for the child who is escalated. So sometimes this requires you to just clear a space in the classroom. So let's say a kiddo is throwing blocks. You would have to make sure that all the kids have left the block area. Sometimes you have to leave the entire classroom. So if that's the case, and this has happened to me before when I was a teacher, I had to make sure that I communicated with my principal or with your site supervisor so that they can let you know where you can take the class if you need to remove them. Oftentimes having access to like a gym or a gross motor area or a place to play outside can sometimes be a nice alternative so that the entire class isn't being like punished and not having anything to do while one child is having problem behaviors. If a kiddo is seeking attention, you should do your best to ignore the behavior and then give immediate positive reinforcement when they're engaging in a positive behavior. So let's say that a kiddo is during circle time, they're like laying on the ground, kind of wiggling back and forth. And you've noticed that they do this a lot because when they're doing it, then a teacher will come over to them and say, hey, so-and-so, you need to sit up, you need to sit up. And so it seems like they're laying down and wiggling around to get adult attention. So maybe you try a new strategy where you're going to ignore them for a while. And then as soon as they pop up, because they haven't been getting that adult attention and they pop up to look around and see what's going on, then you immediately say, wow, I love how you're sitting up and your eyes are on the action. And then maybe next it's like, oh my gosh, I love how you're sitting still at circle. Like I love how your bottom is glued to your circle spot at circle. Just immediately giving them that positive attention for what you want them to be doing while also ignoring what you don't want them to be doing. We also recommend that you redirect a child and get them engaged in an activity. So instead of telling them like, no, stop doing that, you would just say, okay, like, let's go do this or this. You can offer choices like Anne had talked about. And then again, like Anna talked about, using visuals to communicate what the expectations are in the classroom is always a great strategy. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some de-escalation strategies. So these are strategies that we would use to help children calm down and stay with the group. Next slide. Okay, so the first step is to be aware of children's needs. So you need to watch out for areas of concern. Depending on the kiddo and depending on the class, there may be specific activities, like maybe you notice there are always problems happening at the sensory table, or there are always problems happening when kiddos are lining up to go to and from recess. It could be times of day, like a certain kiddo has a harder time arriving in the classroom, or a certain kiddo has a really hard time getting up from their nap. Or it could be a peer dynamic where, you've noticed that two kids, when they're in the same area, there's always going to be problems going on because for whatever reason, they just don't play they don't play very well together. So really watching out for those areas of concern and trying to be proactive about it. The next thing is we need to notice the individual needs and successes of kiddos. So this means that we understand when they may need additional support or they need an opportunity to move ahead of the group. So maybe a kiddo you're working with has a really hard time with fine motor skills. So they have a hard time with writing and drawing and cutting and all of those fun art activities. And so when they're at the art table, they tend to get super frustrated with, which ends up with them throwing things. So maybe you make sure that there's always an adult at the art table so that when that kiddo goes over there, there's someone who can help them and give them the support that they need so that they're not getting so frustrated. Or alternatively, maybe you have an art activity or a writing activity and you have a kiddo in your class who is really advanced in art and writing, and they always finish their activity, within 5 minutes, and you plan on the activity lasting 20. So maybe you need to plan an alternative activity for them to do when they're done, or you need to give them things to add on to the original activity so that they're not sitting there bored and then getting into trouble because they have nothing else to do. Another strategy is to acknowledge kiddos' emotions. So really this means that we're picking up on the cues when they're starting to struggle. So noticing those physical cues that a kiddo is getting upset. So like maybe they're clenching their fists, maybe their face gets scrunched up, maybe their body gets really rigid, maybe they start to shake. You know, different kiddos look very different, but and for some it's not as obvious, but oftentimes, as we know, when we really know kids, we can start to pick up on those body cues, those verbal cues that they let us know that they're starting to get agitated. And then the last point is just to be mindful of teachable moments. So really ask yourself, is this moment a good time for us to work on something hard? Like, did they come in a really bad place? Have they been struggling all morning? Do I really want to stand my ground right now and try to teach them something really hard? Or do I want to find a different time of day or a different day altogether? So really ask yourself, like, is this the thing that I want to target right now? Okay, next slide.
Hey, Emily, can I jump in for just a sec? I noticed
You sure
a lot
can.
of people putting their names in and letting us know that you're still here, and I love that. So if everybody could take this moment to do that while Emily's talking, just go ahead and put your name and back in there so that we know that you're still here and participating. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. I think Valerie got lost in her tabs. I think I see it to the left, Valerie.
Sorry,
from where
my
you-
computer is doing weird things.
You are fine.
I don't know what happened there.
I do your thing.
There we go.
I do.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so part of our job is to help children de-escalate. So when we are helping children de-escalate,
two places
we need
here and on my
to
Wish
teach
you
them
could.
specific strategies to
If you could all make
de-escalate.
sure that you're on mute.
Why is there a hole in the side of there?
I'll just
I
put
think
you on
that
mute.
there's a
There we go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So these specific strategies need to be taught and they need to be practiced when a child is not escalated. So earlier in the presentation, Anne talked about how when we're talking about reading or we're talking about math or how to ride a bike or how to tie our shoes, we are specifically teaching those skills and allowing children to practice them. The same needs to be done when we're talking about de-escalation strategies. We have to specifically teach them and practice them when the child is not escalated, so when they're feeling calm. So it's important for us to carefully observe children for signs of escalation for two specific reasons. For one, it creates a separate space for children to de-escalate. So we understand, like if we know what they look like when they are escalated, then we know that we can teach these skills when they're not in that escalated state. And then we want to be using the strategies. I'm sorry, I think I'm misreading the slide very well. Oh, so there are two routes to teaching these de-escalation strategies. You can either create a separate space for children to go to and de-escalate. So a lot of times in our classrooms, we have we call it like a cozy corner or a calm down area, or sometimes people call it the break space. And so it's a physically separate space for kiddos to go and de-escalate in. And that strategy can be really great for a lot of kiddos, but sometimes it can be hard to use that strategy if you want children to be de-escalating when they're not just in the classroom. Because when we're specifically teaching one area to de-escalate in, if they get escalated at recess, or if they get escalated in the library, or if they get escalated at home, then they won't have access to that one specific cozy corner or break area in the classroom. So the second route to go would then be use specific strategies that the child can use during any activity in any setting. So maybe that's like taking deep breaths, taking a drink of water. We'll be talking more about that, but those are the two different routes that we recommend people go when they're talking about de-escalation strategies. It's really helpful to have multiple options in case one isn't working in the moment. So maybe you start out focusing on one, like you really focus on setting up that cozy corner, on taking a break in a specific area. And then once they have a handle on that, you then teach them alternative activities that they can be doing other places, or vice versa. Maybe you start out by teaching strategies that they can do anywhere, anytime, and then you introduce the cozy corner. But the more options you have, the better off it is, as long as you're teaching it really well and explicitly to the kid when they're not escalated. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the first strategy, I talked a little bit about it already, is having a specific calming area. So for this, you would want to create one specific place in either your classroom or your center where the kiddo can access it anytime they're escalated. So it would be a place for them to take a break or calm down. You would really want to try to limit interactions and distractions while they're in there. You would want to go over and check in with the child when they are calm. So maybe you go over, you crouch down on their level, you make eye contact with them and you say, oh, I see that you have a calm body. Like, are you ready to talk? Or I like how you're laying calmly in the calm down area. Are you ready to try again? So you'd want to check in with them after they're done engaging in the problem behaviors. And this calming place is a really great area to display calming strategies. So the different strategies that we'll be going over, you could very easily put on the walls, or maybe have them like be physical handouts for the kiddo to access in that area. Next slide. So here are some visuals of strategies to use in this area. So these visuals are showing deep breathing. So smell the flower, blow the pinwheel, how to calmly take breaths, put your hands on your tummy, say stop, name your feeling, and take belly breaths. So those would be some really great visuals to have in a calming corner. Next slide. Another strategy would be ripping paper or squeezing soft objects. So you could have these pictures up in the calming corner, and then have maybe a little box of squishies for kids to squish. You could have a box of recycled paper for kiddos to access in there that they could rip up and tear. And that's a great strategy because they could really do it anywhere, and they could also use these same strategies at home. Next slide. Another strategy is to get a drink or read a book. So maybe you have the kiddo keep their water bottle in that area, and then they can drink water while they're in there. Or maybe they have a special cup that they keep in there that they can go and physically, walk over and get some water and then drink it, and but they can keep it in the calming area. Or maybe you have books about feelings, books about, emotions in that area for them to access. Next slide. This strategy shows a menu that we got from the NCPMI website that we'll list off at the end for the pyramid model. And it's a calm down menu that you could put on the wall in your calming area for a kiddo to go and look at and figure out what they want to do to help them calm down. And then you could, maybe the strategy they use is, I see that you're feeling upset. Let's go over to our calm down menu and pick a strategy. And maybe the kiddo, you could start out by blocking all but the top row, and maybe they pick a strategy from the top row. Maybe you block off half the menu and they have half to pick from. Or maybe they're really familiar with the menu and they're able to pick from all of the options. Next slide. Okay, so what to do when a child is engaging in problem behavior. So we talked about this idea of us needing to stay calm, because if we are upset and we are escalated, then we're just going to further escalate the children we're working with. So it's really important to signal to all the kiddos that everything is okay, and it's really important to model that, you know, big feelings are okay and that these behaviors are okay and we don't need to freak out. It's important for us to remember that there are respectful ways to communicate what's going on with your team. So just be mindful that children hear everything we say, and make sure that when we are communicating what's going on to each other in the classroom, that we're being really kind about it. We want to make sure that we're giving children physical space. A child cannot physically hurt you if you are not in their space. So make sure that if a kiddo, I know in the video that we watched, the boy had like flopped to the ground, and she picked him up and carried him to the other room, and then he was hitting her and kicking her while she was carrying him. And in those types of situations, we would typically recommend that you just let a kid be there and you just wait until they're ready to get up. Because if you pick them up and give them that opportunity to hit and kick you, then you're just putting yourself in a situation where you could possibly get hurt, and you could accidentally hurt them while you're carrying them. So it's just better off to just always give physical space and don't put your hands on a kiddo unless they are in danger, because we don't want you guys getting in trouble and we don't want anybody getting hurt. And it's also really important just to avoid power struggles as much as possible. So whenever you're getting into these situations, ask yourself, is this a big deal or a little deal? Like, can I get over what's going on right now? Can I give them space? Can I give them control? And then sometimes you just have to get up and walk away and not even respond. And sometimes just that space and moment to breathe can relieve the situation. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about post-behavior repairing. So a lot of times when a kiddo is escalated, they are not going to totally be in control of their bodies or what they're saying. And sometimes they can do and say things that they regret, and they can feel shame, they can feel upset with themselves on how they acted, and just, you know, have a hard time re-entering the classroom community. So once a kiddo has calmed down and is ready to join the room or the group or the routine, it's important for us as the adult to help them re-enter, because that re-entry can be really difficult for some of our kiddos. When we are helping them re-enter, it shows them and the rest of the kids that they are safe, they are loved, and we care for them regardless of their big feelings or behaviors. It also shows them that the child is good and included in the class and that they are not othered. Because if we are kind of continuing to punish them for their behavior, then it can teach the other children that there's something wrong with that kiddo, and we don't want to be messaging that. It's also really important to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves after these behaviors happen, because sometimes you can feel really exhausted when you're dealing with this type of a situation. So if you need to take a break to regroup, communicate with your teams, you know, say, hey, I need to step out for 5 minutes, like I'm zapped. Or if you're dealing with the same behaviors on a daily basis, maybe before class starts or before the day starts, you talk with your team about how you all can swap each other out and take extra breaks if and when these types of things happen, so that you're not left feeling totally depleted. Because when you have no energy and you haven't taken care of yourself, then you can't be the teacher that you need to be. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to move into our final activity where we're going to be putting it all together. We're going to be talking about all the different strategies that we have learned about so far and how we can put them together into behavior plans. Okay, so I think, Valerie, there were a couple of slides. Oh no, you're right, sorry. I'm apparently it's past my bedtime. So we are going to watch this same video that we had watched earlier. And when you're watching it, I want you to be thinking about possible preventative strategies that the teacher could have used to help this kiddo from getting to where he was. And afterwards, I would love for you to put your ideas into the chat. So we're thinking of preventative strategies.
We don't have some more. Don't forget you left those things out. We have to throw it in the trash can. I don't have any more peaches. Sit down. Look at me. These are dirty. I don't have any more peaches. Would you like some banana?
Zachary, Brianna, and Mike
No,
wash
that's all there
hands.
is. I'm sorry, Joshua. I didn't throw them on the floor. They're dirty. No, Josh, they're dirty. There, you eat your peaches. It's okay, Brittany. Joshua, would you like to get up and have a banana? Miss Leslie, since you're here, Joshua, I'll go in the other room.
Huh? Oh, they don't coincide. Sarah,
I'll take
I'll
it.
take them to the shed. They don't, okay. 'Cause mine-
Joshua, do you want to get up and have a banana, or do you want to go back to the classroom? Okay, we're going back to the classroom. Quiet, come here. I'm sorry that you just fell on the floor. I'm sorry that you didn't get a nap. Joshua, that really hurt.
Okie dokie. So, what are some preventative strategies that you all think the teacher could have used? Go ahead and put that in the chat. So let them know ahead of time that there are a limited number of peaches. Giving space. Recognizing his emotion. Having a variety of snack options. Offering choices. Not accusing, identifying feelings. Giving the option, would you like to walk to the class or lay here? Do you want to throw the peaches away or do you want me to? Yeah, no, these are, you guys are really doing a great job identifying some preventative strategies. An adult should be at the table engaging in conversation to help them make sure the bowl's on the table. Yeah, I think sometimes we, as the adults, if we can just be present and be engaged, then that within itself can prevent so many problem behaviors from happening. Okay, so I love this slide. What do we do? What should we do when what we thought we should do didn't work? We should just hide under a blanket. Just kidding. So next slide. We're going to talk about how to develop a plan. So when we as the ESD, as the instructional coaches from the ESD, we work with our community teams to develop plans to help address problem behaviors. And these are the steps that we take. So the first step that we do is we meet as a team to discuss the problem that we want to address. And we think that you all could follow the same process within your own team. So when you have this meeting, you would want to make sure that you include important adults who will be working with the child, including their family. So maybe it's you and the other adults that are working in your classroom. Maybe it's your director, maybe it's family, important babysitters that they have. You know, you want all of the important people at the table who really know the child best and who will be wanting to work on the problem behavior with the kiddo. The next step is to take lots and lots of ABC data, like we talked about earlier, taking data on the antecedent, what happens before, on the actual behavior, what's happening during, and the consequence, what's happening afterwards. And it would be ideal to have an adult from outside of the team take the data to make it be objective. So a lot of times I've had directors, or just kind of like I've even had my office staff take data before, so that we can really get an objective perspective. Because sometimes when you're in a classroom working with a kiddo day in and day out, you sort of get locked into seeing things through your lens and you're not able to really be objective. The third step is to review the data as a team and then develop an intervention plan. So you want to be identifying what your main concern is. What do you think the behavior means? Are you seeing patterns in the data? And this will help you identify the target behavior. And then we need to help identify what the child should be doing instead of that behavior. What do they need to learn? This is what we would call the replacement behavior, the thing that we're going to teach them to do to get their needs met so that they're not engaging in the problem behaviors. So like, for example, if a kiddo is constantly hitting and we think that they are hitting to get toys from their peers, they're constantly going up to peers who have toys and they're hitting them, and then their peer starts to cry and they grab the toy and then they get to play with it. So that would be the target behavior, would be the hitting, and we know that they're doing it to gain access to a toy. Then maybe the replacement behavior that we would teach them is to walk up to a peer and say, "My turn." And then by teaching them to say "my turn," they can ask for a turn with the toy, and then they won't have to hit them to get the toy. It would be replacing the problem behavior. Once you have that all figured out, then you can develop an action plan. And the action plan is a specific strategy or tool that you'd be using to teach the replacement behavior. So how would we be teaching the child how to say "my turn" instead of hitting? And this action plan really outlines who will do what by when, and it gives a clear plan for all of the adults working with the kiddo. Okay, next slide. So here is a sample intervention plan or a sample action plan, kind of like what we had talked about. So on the left-hand column, we see the target behavior to decrease, the target behavior to increase, the behavior hypothesis, and the intervention. So in this example, the target behavior to decrease is non-compliance. So this specific kiddo is running away and not lining up at the end of recess. This is one of my least favorite problem behaviors, when you ring the bell, ding-ling-a-ling, recess is over, time to line up, and you have a kid who is just running around the play structure, smiling at you, laughing at you, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, there's one of me, there's 20 of you. How the heck am I supposed to get this kid to line up?" So the target behavior that we would want to increase is participation during the transition from recess to classroom. So we want them to line up. We want them to participate in that transition. And when they're participating, that means that they're lining up with the class. So our behavior hypothesis is that during the transition from recess to the classroom, this kiddo runs away and does not line up to gain attention from adults. She likes running around the play structure, smiling and laughing, because she gets adults to chase after her. And who wouldn't love that? Having everyone stop what they're doing and chase after her. And so our intervention is going to be using some preventative strategies. So maybe we're giving the whole class a 1-minute warning to line up. Then we're also giving Sydney an individual 1-minute warning to line up. And then we're also using some consequence strategies. So when she lines up with the class, we give her a high five or a thumbs up because she really loves that adult attention. If she doesn't line up, then we go ahead and transition to the classroom without giving her any attention. We ignore her and we just start to walk inside. We tell the other adults that she's outside to keep an eye on her, but we don't worry about it. We know that she's safe. Other adults in the area know the plan. Everybody understands why we're doing it, that we're not intentionally leaving her outside in the play area, that we're doing it because it's a part of the intervention plan and it's been thoughtfully figured out and planned out, and we're just going to do our best to ignore her. So that is a sample intervention plan for that specific behavior.
Also, I put links to these forms in the chat for everybody.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, and then there's one more sample action plan, I think. Perfect, thank you so much. So the action plan is really like the to-do list for the adults. And so based on our intervention plan from the last slide, the action plan would lay out the clear steps of everything that needs to be done to make sure that everything's ready to go. So for the first part, it goes over who is going to be creating the visuals and tools for the team. So we need a 1-minute line-up visual for teachers. We need a social story outlining the routine of lining up after recess. And we also need a data collection form. So then it would say specifically who on the team is doing it and the day that it's going to be done. And then the next part of the plan is who's going to be talking about the plan with everybody, who's going to be doing the training, because sometimes you as the lead teacher may be figuring out the plan, but you need to train the other adults in your room who are coming in to give breaks and coming in maybe to sub, or maybe you need to train the family what to do at home on the same plan. So then it would say who's going to do that training and when that's going to be done. Then you would write out when you're going to start implementing this plan and who's going to be doing every single piece. Maybe you have one person doing one part, another person doing another part, another person doing another part, so that all the responsibilities aren't falling on one teacher in the classroom. And then the last part is just taking data. And data collection can be really tricky. Sometimes we take data on just doing the plan. So maybe if the plan for this plan, it's like, did we use the visuals? Did we give the warning? Yes. If we did, then we would just do a check mark every day for doing it. Sometimes we want to be more specific with our data, and we would want to take data on, you know, whether Sydney lined up or did Sydney stay out on the playground? And if she did stay on the playground, how long did she stay out there before she lined up? So depending on what's going on in your classroom and how much bandwidth you have for taking data and your experience taking data and how good you feel about doing it, that can kind of dictate what type of data you take. Next slide. Okay, so now we are going to practice what we just talked about. So we are going to rewatch the video, and when you're watching it, I want you to be thinking about the behavior that you would want to target. So what is he doing? What is he communicating? And what problem behavior would you want to target? Then I want you to be thinking about what replacement behavior you would want to teach him. So what do you want him to do instead? What is the thing that you need him to do to get his needs met? And what strategies do you think that you could use in your action plan if you were to write one for him? How specifically would you be teaching him this replacement behavior? What tools would you be using to teach him the replacement behavior? So we'll go ahead and watch that video again. We're thinking about target behaviors, replacement behaviors, and strategies.
We don't have some more. Don't forget you left those things out. We gotta throw it in the trash can. I don't have any more peaches. Sit down. Look at me. These are dirty. I don't have any more peaches. Would you like some banana?
Zachary, Brianna, and Wyatt go wash
That's all there
hands.
is. I'm sorry, Joshua. I didn't throw them on the floor. They're dirty. Joshua, would you like to get up and have a banana? Miss Leslie, since you're here, Joshua, huh?
Oh, they don't coincide. Sarah, I'll take them to the shed. They don't, okay.
Joshua, do you want to get up and have a banana, or do you want to go back to the classroom? Okay, we're going back to the classroom. Quiet, come in here. I'm sorry that your pictures fell on the floor. And I'm sorry that you didn't get a nap. Joshua, that really hurt.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So the next slide is going to give us a chance to take a little bit of time to reflect and respond. So I don't know about you all, but I feel like I'm going to be dreaming about peaches tonight. So we're going to take 5 minutes for you just to kind of think about what your target behavior would be, what would your replacement behavior be, and what specific strategies you would use. If you have that action plan or intervention plan templates handy, I know Anne put those in the chat. You can fill them out on there, or you can just put it on a scratch piece of paper, whatever works best for you. And then after 5 minutes in the chat, we'll go ahead and share out what your target behavior was and what your replacement behavior was. So we'll go ahead and start that 5-minute timer, and then we'll share out afterwards. Okay, as our timer is finishing up, you can go ahead and put your target behavior and replacement behavior in the chat. So we want to decrease throwing and hitting, increase using words, replacement offering him the chance to throw away the snack himself, pick something else. Giving more time. I'm seeing some really good strategies, volcano breaths, jumping in place, taking deep breaths. Some more on target behaviors, throwing himself on the floor, screaming when he didn't get what he wanted. Yeah, so increasing using words. I'm seeing a lot of really great stuff. I think the key takeaway for replacement behaviors is that they can't engage in the target behavior and the replacement behavior at the same time. If they're engaging in the replacement behavior, then they cannot be doing the target behavior. So if the target behavior is the tantruming, the hitting, the screaming, the kicking, then what would we be having him do at the same that he would be doing, but he can't be tantruming at the same time, but would be getting him what he wants. So if he's tantruming because he wanted the peaches and he didn't get what he wanted, then if we're teaching him to calmly ask for more food, or he could calmly be requesting a break, or he could be calmly telling the teacher what he wants, then he wouldn't be able to do that at the same time as having those tantrum behaviors, and it would be getting him what he wants. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of really great references to strategies talking about feelings, validating his thoughts and feelings, working on safely expressing himself. Yeah, those are all really great. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we are almost done. We appreciate you so much for all of your time and participation during the training. I think I'm passing the baton off to Miss Anne.
All right, so our last slide talks about some tools and resources. So Valerie, if you want, yeah, there we go. So this is a list of some different things that you can find online. Some of the material that we got was from this NCPMI website. They also have a resource library, so they have lots of really great stuff there that you can check out. This next one is the Center on the Social and Emotional Foundations for Early Learning. That's also a really great website. It has some social stories. It has some visuals that you can download for like problem solving, conflict resolution kinds of things. Lots of just different activity ideas that promote social emotional learning. There's the Center for the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. Emily, do you want to say anything more about that one? I'm not as familiar with that one.
I don't think so. I think that that's where a lot of the cell information comes from, and just talking about social emotional health and awareness.
Okay. The next one, the Head Start Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, eClick. It has some really great kind of learning modules. So you can go if you want to like learn more about how to arrange your classroom environment, or you want to learn more about transitions. They have some mini modules, both in English and Spanish. And you can watch those, and just doesn't take very long to kind of go through a module. And then Lesson Picks is a website where you can make visuals. It's very easy to do. It does cost, I think, like maybe $30 a year. But you can make all sorts of things on there. You can make schedules, you can print up games. It literally has like hundreds of different types of visuals and things that you can make. And then I also listed these solution kits, and these are from that Supple website. Valerie, if you want to click on the solution kit English for me, I'm just going to show you real quick what that looks like. Okay, so if you scroll down a little bit, so you can print these out yourself, and then you'll have some already made visuals to help out in your classroom. So these are some different ways, you know, to cue kids on some problem solving strategies for conflict resolution. You know, they can take a break, they can ignore it, they could ask nicely, get a timer, share. So some great visuals, both English and Spanish versions available from that website. So that's another really great resource. All right, thanks, Valerie.
Sorry to interrupt. I started typing a response in the chat, but I figured it was worth kind of bringing up to the whole group. Rachel Fort brought up a really good point that they've noticed that a lot of times there used to be 1 or 2 kiddos engaging in problem behaviors, but now it seems like the entire class is having these big behaviors at once. And she asked if there were any recommendations for big group calming. And I think if you're noticing that the whole class is needing redirections and resets, I would just put that into your schedule. Like maybe creating a few times during the day where you do small group yoga or whole group yoga. Maybe having times during the day where you're turning off the lights and you're playing soft music and kiddos are engaged in quiet activities could be a great way to help people reset. I also think by providing as much free choice time as possible, and then creating structure within that free choice can be really helpful. Oftentimes we end up setting up our classroom schedules where we have a bunch of really highly structured activities, one after the other, and then kiddos are acting out because they have a harder time during those adult-led, adult-directed activities. So by creating more opportunities for kids to just have free choice and be able to play and do what they want, then we may see fewer problem behaviors. And then you as the teacher can be pulling a few kids at a time to do small group activities so that it's not just like a whole free-for-all the entire part of the day, but that for the majority of the time, kiddos are able to do what they want to do and be self-directed. So I hope that's helpful.
I'm putting a couple more resources in the chat. One is some downloadable kids yoga pose cards that you can do. And this next one that I'm putting in are some Pinterest activities for non-nappers. So if you have kids that just are not going to go to sleep, you can set up, kind of make like some little bins with some quiet activities that they can do, or busy bags. So hopefully those will help. And that is all that we have for you. So we'd like to open it up now for questions. You can either put them in the chat, or you can just turn yourself off, take off mute and shout it out.
On those links, I got yoga poses, both links.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Thank you.
They're
Let me
great,
look.
but I was really
You don't need it twice.
on the non-nappers. I always want ideas for that.
I know. All right, let me try this again. Oops. Maybe you guys could let us know like one takeaway from today, something that you are going to try after this.
There was one, Lindsay brought up something about circle time. Do you think it's good to expect them to participate, or is it okay if they're listening in the vicinity of circle time? You know, I think it really depends on the kiddo. I think that sometimes our definition of active listening or participation is different than what a kiddo is. Like I've had kids who have been, their back has been to me, they've been looking around, but if I ask them a question, they would be able to answer it. So I think you just kind of have to start with where the kid is and then work on baby steps to getting them towards doing what you want them to do. So maybe right now they're hanging out on the outside of circle, but they're still attending and you're okay with that. But then maybe you entice them over to the circle to do something really exciting. Like maybe they love songs, maybe they love being able to come and put stuff up on your board. And so you give them opportunities to do that. And then you praise the heck out of them for doing it. And then you encourage them to sit back down afterwards and you praise the heck out of doing that. But I think it really depends on the kid and helping them kind of start where they are and then helping them build up to where you want them to be is the easiest way to do it.
There was another question about strategies for kids during unexpected schedule breaks. So for example, we have had students run or hide during the fire drills. Yes. One thing you can try is making a social story so that kids know what to do during those unexpected times. If you know ahead of time that those are going to be happening, prep them so that they know that it's coming. Even repeated prep like in a few days or tomorrow, in 10 minutes. I don't know, Emily, do you have other ideas for that? That's hard when it's unexpected like that, especially when it's something loud like a fire drill and it comes unexpectedly. That can be hard.
Yeah, I think trying to pre-teach as much as possible would be my first route. Having like noise canceling headphones handy to offer to the kiddo is always helpful. And then I think just those are the times when you just might have to assign an adult to that kid. Or if you have a kid in your class that you know needs a lot of adult attention, asking someone from the office if they would be available to step in and help you with that kiddo during that time, or maybe helping take care of the rest of your class while you give your attention to that kiddo might be the easiest for everyone.
Can I have a question? Can I ask you a question, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We have two kids, they don't like go to sleep and they want to play with the Play-Doh or something like this, but I worked so hard on them. I used my finger on their face. Then in the end, they start take their nap every day. But I have to be very serious with them at this time. Is that okay or not?
You know, I'd be curious as to what Anne says. I think that's okay. I think that by, you know, I think there's a difference between being serious and being harsh. I think that by when I hear you say that you have to be really serious, to me, that sounds like you're just being really clear with your expectations of them during nap time. And it sounds like if you being serious and helping them be calm on their mat helps them fall asleep, then I think that's okay. But I would be curious as to what Anne thinks.
I think nap time is such a hard time because some kids need to nap, other kids really are developmentally kind of past the point of napping. And so it's really hard when you need to keep the classroom environment quiet so that the kids who need to nap can sleep, and kind of what to do with the other kids. So I think that there's a lot of preventative strategies that you can use, like, turning down the lights, just kind of making a very calming environment beforehand, doing some yoga poses, maybe having a story time just to help kids start to calm down, even like up to a half hour before nap time to really kind of start prepping their bodies for calm time. We can't force kids to sleep, and it's probably unrealistic and not developmentally appropriate to expect that kids are going to lay on their mat with nothing to do if they don't fall asleep. So I think the alternative strategy, the replacement strategy, would be to provide something quiet that they could do, at their mat, whether that be looking at stories, maybe listening to a story on tape, making like a little busy box, coloring, and maybe being able to kind of rotate those activities so that they're novel and still kind of seem interesting.
Yeah, but those two kids, we know they have some kind of autism. They need speech therapy, and their muscles very strong, and they cannot rest their body easily. Because that, I start to work on them, leave them in the floor and do something like this on their face. And when they wake up, I feel that was great time to them, because I feel they took their rest, and they need to rest their brain, because they start to be very nervous. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be really challenging for kids who have a difficult time regulating themselves to kind of help get them to that point of being calm enough to actually, be able to rest or to fall asleep. So, listening to really soft music. I have actually a short PowerPoint that I put together on nap times. I will put the link in here for you because it has some ideas in there and also some resources in the resource link that I really love for kids. So let me just copy that real quick, as I know that this is a struggle everywhere.
I also think when we're thinking of behaviors that happen during a routine like nap time, partnering with the family as much as possible to make sure that you are doing the same things before the kiddo goes down for their nap that the family is doing at home before they take their nap can really help. Because if everyone's following the same routine and doing the same things, then that will help the child know, and that will help their body know that it's time to get ready to take a nap and it's time to go to sleep. Like if you think of your own bedtime routine, you probably do the same few things every night before you go to sleep, no matter whether you're at home or, in a hotel room or on vacation or whatever. So I think trying to get on the same page as a family can be really helpful.
All right, we have about 3 minutes. If anybody else has any last minute questions. Otherwise, if you don't, you are welcome to leave. We will send out an evaluation forms tomorrow for you to fill out. And remember, if you have any questions about oral credits, contact your CCR&R agencies. And we so appreciate you taking the time to come to our training tonight. We hope that you enjoyed it and got some useful information.
I actually had one really quick question.
Yeah.
I wrote it in the chat, but I just wanted to, I have one little boy in my classroom, and I know I have 2 or 3 children that when they get upset, they really scream loud. And I know how more or less to help those children, but this other little boy just falls apart, just starts crying. And to try to soothe him or help him through that, it almost takes longer to help this little boy than it does the children to recover. I'm not exactly sure how to help him recover easily. I mean, it's good like half an hour, maybe half of his day is ruined because these children have done this, earlier in the morning, and he's having to regroup and come together, after this has taken place. Do you have any, maybe any recommendations or something that maybe I can help him?
That's really hard. I think I've worked with a couple of kiddos like that, and it doesn't sound very nice. So I'll just preface it that way. But what I've usually done is I take a minute to really focus all of my time and attention on them. And I help get them to that cozy corner. I would help show them the strategies of different things that they can do to calm down. And I would either have them pick the first strategy, or I would pick one for them, get them started. And then I tell them look, I need to go and check on so-and-so over here. I'll come back and check on you in a few minutes, but I want you to still practice on working on calming down. And then I leave them for 10 minutes. And then I come back after 10 minutes and check on them and say, oh, I see you're still upset. Let's pick another strategy. Let's try this. Walk them through that second one. And then I tell them again, I need to go and work with so-and-so over here. We would love to have you come join us when you're calm. Why don't you come join us over here and see if I can get them over. But I think that just going and checking in with them, helping them and leaving them shows them that you care about them, that you're not forgetting about them, but that it's really important for you and for everyone to keep going about your day as you need to. What do you think, Anne?
I agree. And I was going to put one more thing in the chat for you for the kids who are screaming. We have a visual called a voiceometer.
Okay.
And it kind of helps. It's a visual for helping kids regulate their voice.
Okay. That's great.
Then somebody asked if we're having an evaluation. The evaluations will be sent out tomorrow. So be looking for those. All right. Well, if anybody has more questions, we will be here. If not, have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you so much.